So this is a quick video on using catalysts to anticipate price action. So I'm going to go through a couple examples, starting with drug, which everybody probably knows because of the insane move it made. I guess it was 2 weeks ago. Basically, it was a sympathy to this ticker LBPH, which got acquired for like $2.5 billion. And so when it made this wild move from like less than 1 to 30s, what was coming next, which was very likely, which was an offering. So that's like the first catalyst I'll go over. And so generally that favors shorts because, especially when it's made a move from of this magnitude, longs don't really want to be holding long into that because you don't know what the pricing is going to be. When it's made that big of a move, it could be really bad and gap down on that news. So generally what will happen before an offering is you will see this kind of fading action, which is what happened. And then they actually ended up pricing it really good at 2170 and then had this secondary move. And then following this, I guess just to go over some more catalysts associated with this one, is after the private placement, you can expect 13G ownership filings to come out from the people that participated, which are generally positive catalysts. In this case, you had some notable funds like 0.72 participating in the offering, along with a few others. Didn't necessarily make any moves off that. There had some spikes after hours, but they gave it back. But generally, it's been, I mean, for a stock that came from there to be holding up this well. It also has some other catalysts coming. So just go over the insights here, key dates and timelines. They have this, they're presenting data at this conference in a little over a week, and then one in December. So you can see the price action is kind of reflecting that. When a catalyst is coming, you often see this kind of just holding up action where, longs want to hold on, and maybe news will come out, maybe it'll make a secondary move. So you kind of see this action, which we're seeing in another one, TVGN. This one's funny. I think they've released more news than I've ever seen any stock in a 2-week period in almost 10 years I've been trading. It all started with they announced, it was like an announcement about an announcement. They basically said that they would be announcing their revenue pipeline, which was this day. I mistakenly thought it was a sell the news event, but I actually missed that they had more news coming, which they've done a couple times actually. I think they were teasing. They kind of keep dangling these carrots out there. They were teasing news, and then they released news, and it pushed on that. And then this week again, actually let me go to TVGN. So I think it was this one here. So upcoming dates, timelines, update on revenue forecasts and AI efforts provided by the end of this week. So you can see here, people have been getting rewarded for holding on in the catalyst. So you can see this action here, buying ahead of that catalyst. And the news they released after hours actually wasn't about AI or the revenue forecast. I guess people didn't like that, so it sold off. But they've been doing a good job, just kind of like dangling these catalysts out there to kind of keep people from selling. And then when they do, it just gets bought back up. And I guess to switch over to some negative examples of negative catalysts. So there's this ticker ZPTA. So this one basically is ceasing operations. So like in this 8K back on the 11th, basically mentioned that there's planning a cessation of the company's operations. And usually what follows this is a delisting notice. And so what the thing is, when a catalyst like that is looming, it makes it hard for these tickers to sustain any momentum because, it could come out at any time. You don't want to be holding long when that's coming out. You don't know when they're going to say they're getting delisted. They could say we're getting delisted in a day or two. So that's an example of the type of catalyst that makes it hard for a stock to maintain momentum. Another one is CNSP. So this one had a couple issues. One is that they've been under the dollar bid price requirement. The Nasdaq was saying that they weren't eligible for an extension, but now they're having a hearing on November 5th. So having some issues there. And then on the financial side of things, they also have some listing issues because they're not in compliance with the Nasdaq minimum stockholder equity requirement, which means they actually need to raise money to comply with that. You can see here if they are unable to raise sufficient funds, they may be delisted. This is all coming from the latest financial report, by the way. But you can see that there's some negatives looming there. The offering especially, where kind of same situation where it's hard to maintain momentum with that looming. It could come out at any time, and it did. They dropped an offering intraday here. Now it doesn't always work out perfectly like that. Just to show an example where it didn't work out. So with this one, MTEM, this one basically had approved a liquidation dissolution pending stockholder approval. Now, my thesis was that that would act as another negative catalyst because they still were going to announce the date that they were going to vote on that, and that usually is perceived as a negative when that comes out. So I figured with that looming, it would be hard for it to maintain momentum similar to CNSP, similar to ZPTA, where it has this kind of negative catalyst looming. That wasn't the case, actually. So it's not only, so this is the gap day, I don't have pre-market showing, it squeezed here, and then usually it should just die off there, but it didn't. It actually came back and squeezed again, had a secondary squeeze. And then they did ultimately put out the vote, but it's funny because they didn't set a date. So now it's kind of like if you all remember NEXI, they kind of had a similar situation where they were going through dissolution. But what would happen was when the vote filing came out, it would gap down, it would sell off, and then they would come out with a filing, say we're postponing it and it'll be later, and then it would spike again. And they did that for like months. It was kind of funny. But you could kind of see it was like rising and falling with like the catalyst and what people are expecting on what was coming and when. But that's it. Just wanted to walk through a couple examples of just how the price, you can see how the stock behaves going into either, positive or negative catalysts, and see how it reacts when those catalysts come out, and to be aware of those. And that's it.